now to our arts beat. Los Angeles might still regard itself as the movie capital of the world, but we are quickly becoming known as a theater town, too. More plays are produced each year in L.A. than major motion pictures, and important works are launched from our stages before traveling the country. While the theater world is often regarded as much cooler, hipper, and more diverse than, say, Hollywood, the statistics tell a very different story. Take a look. According to a study by the Dramatist magazine, approximately 85% of plays in the U.S. that receive professional productions are written by white writers, and 70% are written by men. What's wrong with that picture, right? But one theater company is working to change that. It's called the Lark, and it's an international theater company based in New York, dedicated to supporting diverse stories and playwrights, including right here in Los Angeles, and making a big difference. Joining us now in studio to tell us more about the Lark's artistic productions is director John Clinton Eisner and playwright Josef Adkins. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So much is changing here in Hollywood, as you know. Everybody wants so much content, so we want the screenwriter, but all of a sudden the playwright has become the premium get. How has the Lark supported the nurturing of playwrights, and what's their importance in a town like Hollywood?
Well, it's so interesting. I think there have been many times in history when extraordinarily interesting writers and thinkers have come from other parts of the country to Hollywood. What's interesting to me is that we have a little space in New York City where we gather writers from all different kinds of communities to tell their stories. And as they become confident in the stories they're telling about their communities, many of them are historically marginalized communities, they find their voices, and Hollywood wants them, and people ask them to come and tell their stories out here. And suddenly there's this massive community of extraordinary people here, and I come out a couple of times a year just to hang out with them and to marvel at the community that's forming here now.
That's so tremendous. And you've had work that you've transferred here and produced here, and mentored, playwrights that have produced work here in Los Angeles. So can you give us an idea of some of those shows?
Oh, you're asking me to list things, and I'm not very good at that. But I
at the Amundsen, at the
Amundsen, the Taper, the Geffen. I just went to see a play that was the very first play by a wonderful writer named Becca Brunstetter. Her very first play that she wrote maybe a dozen years ago, and she's written a dozen plays since then while writing a lot of stuff for
okay, just
television. And I just went to see it at a small theater, the Rogue Machine Theater, that's down in Venice. And so from the tiniest theaters to the largest theaters, the Taper and other places, we're seeing work by writers who actually historically haven't necessarily been heard on stages in this country.
And the Lark finances, supports workshops, and you have some Pulitzer Prize winners on your team, don't you?
Yeah, well, the last 3 Pulitzer Prize winners in drama actually are Lark-affiliated writers, and have done a lot of that writing at the Lark.
And Keith, you are a product of the Lark program.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. So why is it's so important to you? I was reading this article in the New York Times, and they said that it's important for playwrights to use language to help us cope, to help us strategize, and to help us hold up a mirror to think about the future. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. The great thing about the Lark is that it's a space where playwrights can come and not feel the pressure of performance and sort of the pressure of please produce me. It's a place where it's an incubator for voice, it's an incubator for politics, it's an incubator for all types of things. And I think like John is really great at knowing like who to target and what's urgent in our community, and bringing us all into the same space so we can just feel free to tell great stories and sort of like, critique each other, and no one gets mad at each other.
It's safe.
It's a very safe, yes, exactly. That's a safe word, safe, yeah.
And so, I mean, there's been a revolution in this town because, typically, tell me if I'm wrong, playwrights don't make as much money as screenwriters, TV writers. So does this kind of revolution with all the big Amazons, Hulus, and the rest wanting, more and more content, does this give you more opportunities for business in LA than you've ever had?
Yes. What's interesting about that is that for the most part, playwrights are living off of commissions and small productions, right? And so often you have stories that you want to tell, but most larger institutions don't have the room to tell that story, or they don't have the audience that wants to hear that story. But the great thing about Hollywood and television and film is that they want to hear all kind of stories. So now playwrights who have been holding these stories for so long are rushing out here to be able to tell whatever story that they feel is important and urgent to them. So I kind of feel like LA, well, at least I'll say TV and film feels a little bit more revolutionary than actually theater, institutional theater.
Wow.
At this point. In the
Oh,
game.
that's true. But at the same time, and I want to ask you a question because I'm a product of the theater. That's how I started in the entertainment business. So why do you feel like the theater is so special, and why do you feel like it's so relevant and it's so vital? I mean, we got to keep the American theater alive,
especially today with all
the
this
streaming
politics.
Right.
Going on.
No, of course.
Yeah.
I think that's a key word. I think that it is a time where there's so much happening in the world, and often poets and AKA playwrights are the ones who are really out there sort of like, hey,
responding to it.
They want to respond immediately, which is what's great about the Lark, too, because they give space for immediate sort of reaction to things. And I think what's great is that TV and film are recognizing that playwrights are urgent storytellers and that they come into the space wanting to tell stories driven by character and not just plot-driven stories, but let's talk about Africa, or let's talk about East Africa, or let's talk about what's happening in Scandinavia and global warming. You know, it's like really important, urgent stories.
One of the things the Lark does, I understand, is really give voice to the voiceless, those who haven't been able to come forward and bring their stories. How important is the diversification?
Well, you know, theater is everywhere. Theater is community, and the great thing about theater is it brings things down to a small group of people in a room who want to hear about each other. And so when we're looking at a community like the disabled community or the different sectors of the African American community or the Latinx community, there are communities that are actually trying to find language to talk about their experience, and the theater is probably the most ideal way to create that. And that platform actually translates very easily into this move we've seen of a lot of writers to Los Angeles, because those thoughts, ideas, and voices are being developed and prepared to actually reach a mass audience.
And it's so true. I feel like the theater to me is like church. It's like a temple. You go there and you get to learn a lesson. One of my favorite lines from the musical Once on This Island is about, you know, why we tell the story, and we got to keep telling the story.
Exactly.
You know,
Well, I'm just excited.
For Hamilton, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, where it happens to affect the change.
For more information to support the Lark, visit larktheater.org or text news plays to 44321. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. So exciting.
It's a
We're a
pleasure.
theater town
That's
now.
right. Yes, we are.